In today's narrative, we delve into a story filled with treachery, vengeance, and surprising turns. Ryan Davis believed he was returning from a typical business journey, but the scene he encountered was far from normal. A startling revelation leads to a perilous chase of deceit, where confidence is broken and lives are irrevocably altered. Prepare for an emotional roller coaster as we uncover a tale that will keep you riveted. After 5 years, I found myself departing a business exposition a day ahead of schedule for the first time. I am employed at a telecommunications firm, and annually we participate in 3 major trade expos held in various cities nationwide, each extending over 5 days. We prepare our stand on Sunday and Monday, and the expo begins on Tuesday morning, concluding at midday on Thursday. For the previous 5 years, I diligently remained at every expo, staying until the final crate was secured and loaded onto the truck on Thursday evening. However, at the last expo in May at the Las Vegas Convention Center, I sprained my ankle on Tuesday evening, making it impossible to man the stand the following day. At lunch on Wednesday, my manager stated that there was no point in staying if I was unable to work, advising me to book a return flight. I didn't hesitate and was on a flight back to Denver by 2 that afternoon. Before boarding the flight in Vegas, I phoned home and left a message for Ashley, my wife of 9 years, informing her I would be home by 8 that evening. She had been annoyed with me over something before I departed on the trip, but had chosen not to discuss it then, proposing we address it upon my return. Despite the annoyance of the twisted ankle and my boss sending me home early, I was relieved to be returning to resolve whatever was troubling her. When my taxi arrived at our residence, I noticed a black Cadillac in the driveway. I did not recognize it, knew no one who owned such a vehicle, and it slightly irritated me that Ashley would have guessed over knowing I was due to arrive. I assumed she would be eager to discuss whatever issue she believed we faced. As I entered through the front door, I heard voices emanating from the living room. I walked into the kitchen and peeked around the corner, receiving the shock of my life. Ashley was on the couch with my best friend, Kyle Thompson. It wasn't merely their presence that shocked me, it was the fact that her shirt was partially open. That hit me profoundly. Neither had noticed my arrival yet. I moved through the kitchen and stood at the entrance to the living room. The Ashley jumped, startled by my unexpected appearance. "Ryan, what are you doing back so soon?" she queried, her expression and her failure to adjust her shirt indicating she might have anticipated this moment. "What's happening here, Ashley?" I demanded. "Sweetheart, it's not what you presume," she replied with a shaky grin. I just stood there, trying to comprehend the scene before me. The pain in my ankle surged, a vivid reminder that this was all too genuine. Throughout this exchange, Kyle had remained motionless, just watching me with an entertained grin. That's when I lost my composure. I didn't care about Kyle's size or how much my ankle was throbbing. I was intent on throwing him out of my home. I advanced towards the couch, and suddenly I was struck from behind. A man, appearing out of nowhere, had me in a chokehold in an instant. I could still breathe, but the threat was unmistakable. "Get it now, Ryan," Ashley scorned. "We knew you'd come back," she continued, explaining how Kyle had revealed the details of my supposed activities at these business expos. "Did you really think I wouldn't discover, or that it wouldn't matter?" she scorned. I attempted to speak, but the man restraining me covered my mouth. A wave of some chemical odor overwhelmed me, and the room began to spin. The next thing I knew, I was waking up sprawled on the bed in the guest room, my wrists and ankles tightly bound with wire, restricting the blood flow. My ankle ached as if it were aflame. For a moment, I forgot Ashley's words, but then I heard voices from the TV at the bed's end. It was Ashley and Kyle. "Hope you're awake," Babe Ashley cooed into the camera. Honestly, I wasn't concerned with her actions. Our marriage had ended. My focus was on escaping. My hands and feet were growing numb. Who knew how long they'd be distracted? I couldn't wait. I began with my left leg, disregarding the pain as I pulled against the wire, yank, pause, until it finally broke. My ankle was bleeding, yet it seemed minor. The right leg was more difficult. The sprained ankle hindered my efforts. When the wire finally snapped, it took a piece of skin with it. Now for the arms, I managed to free my left wrist, sustaining only minor cuts, but the right was securely bound. Using my teeth, I began to chew through the wire. Once free, I staggered to my feet. Blood was everywhere. The room was spinning, and a severe headache was emerging. I could hear Ashley calling my name, but when I opened my eyes, I realized the voice was coming from the TV. "Are you watching this?" Ryan on the screen were Ashley and Kyle, and let's just say it was unsightly. I saw red momentarily. I thought about smashing the TV with something heavy, but to what end? Besides, I was dizzy, weak, and uncertain of the capabilities of the person who had ambushed me. Surveying the rec room, an idea began to form. Ashley thought this was some form of perverse entertainment. Well, I'd give her a performance. I swung my right arm, the one Kyle had twisted, toward the TV, splattering blood across the screen. As I turned away, I saw my reflection in the mirror. A large bruise was developing on my forehead, showing 4 distinct marks resembling knuckles. Ashley had orchestrated everything. Had someone drugged me, tied me up? The impulse to grab a baseball bat crossed my mind, but the dizziness lingered, plus I was no match for both of them in my condition. Injuring them would be worse, that wasn't the solution, but I could make them believe it was. I smeared blood on the bedposts, the pillows, then used my fingers to draw 2 bloody lines on the carpet from the bed to the door leading across the hallway to the guest bathroom. There I found gauze and tape under the sink, making sure to clean the faucet, the cabinet door, anything I might have touched. Fortunately, our master bedroom was downstairs, reducing the likelihood of Ashley and her accomplice hearing me. Back in the guest room, I applied the limited first aid knowledge I had to bandage myself both ankles and the left wrist, leaving the right wrist exposed for effect. I picked up the cordless phone beside the bed, making sure to transfer blood onto it, and dialed 911. "Help, please, they're going to hurt me," I gussed into the phone, laying it on thick. Without hanging up, I let the phone drop to the floor along with the gauze and tape, then sneaked out through the back staircase down to the garage. The Cadillac was still there. I smeared my bloody hand on the door handle, then pressed it against the trunk. Across the street was an empty lot. I ducked behind some bushes, found a suitable hiding spot, and waited. While I waited, I bandaged my right wrist. It wasn't long before the first police cruiser arrived. The wait was brief. Within 5 minutes, the first cruiser pulled up. 2 officers alighted and approached the house, while another car arrived, its officers circling to the rear. One of the officers at the front door rang the bell, waited, rang again. Then, after a solid half-minute, began to knock forcefully. The porch light flickered on, and Ashley, clearly surprised, opened the door to find the police on her doorstep. I was too far away to hear what was said, but I could guess that the officers informed her about the 911 call and inquired if everything was okay. Ashley, of course, feigned ignorance, claiming she was alone and clueless about their concerns. The officers weren't convinced. Ashley maintained her claim that she was alone in the house playing the innocent, bereft little woman while her husband was away on business. Then the 2 officers from the rear returned, escorting Kyle and Darnell with them. "Look who we found trying to leave out the back," Mayam, one of them, announced. Ashley's poise shattered. She collapsed against the door frame as if her knees had failed. One of the officers assisted her back inside while the others guided Kyle and Darnell through the door. Oh, how I wished I could have been a fly on the wall inside that house. I could only imagine the expression on Ashley's face when they opened the guest room door. Absolutely priceless. Part of me wanted to dash across the street and hide in the Cadillac's trunk while everyone was preoccupied, but that was far too dangerous. 10 minutes of strained silence ensued, then suddenly chaos erupted. 2 more police cars arrived, sirens wailing, lights flashing. Shortly afterward, Kyle and Darnell were led out in handcuffs, both protesting their innocence regarding any wrongdoing to that woman's husband. They were put into separate cars and taken away. Meanwhile, other officers inspected the Cadillac. It didn't take long for them to notice the blood on the door handle, then on the trunk. One officer pulled a set of keys from Darnell's pocket and opened the trunk. I somewhat wished I had been inside the trunk when he opened it, but it turned out it didn't matter. The officer took one look inside and immediately summoned backup. "We've got guns and drugs here," he shouted to another officer who had just arrived, 3 minutes minus 10, and about a kilogram of what seemed like cocaine. Over the next 20 minutes, the police documented everything in Darnell's trunk and had the Cadillac towed away. The cruisers carrying Kyle and Darnell departed, and soon Ashley too was led out in handcuffs. They placed her in the back of a squad car and took her away. A couple of officers remained, sealing off the front door with yellow crime scene tape. That's when I knew it was time to leave. I slipped through the empty lot to the street behind Ashley's house, staying in the shadows, making my way to a shopping center about 10 blocks away. There was a McDonald's there. By now, I must have looked dreadful, blood-soaked bandages and a prominent bruise on my forehead, but I needed to get off the street for a while. I had just enough change for a large coffee. I figured I'd be conspicuous inside, but this McDonald's was crowded with people who seemed to have seen tougher times than me. No one even glanced my way as I settled into a corner with my coffee, sipping slowly. Thinking of Ashley, Kyle, and Darnell being interrogated at the station, I couldn't help but smirk. They'd be wondering where I was, and whatever they did say would seem dubious. The only issue was how to re-emerge without being arrested for filing a false report. By the time I finished my coffee, I thought I had a plan. When I went to ask for a refill, the manager offered me one on the house if I took it to go. That was fine by me. Coffee in hand, I began the long trek to a park I knew a few miles away. I kept my head down, hiding behind trees and bushes whenever a car passed. My ankle was in agony, but I persisted. It took me almost an hour to reach the park. I found a secluded picnic table in a dark corner and sat there until around 3 in the morning. Then I discarded the bandages in a trash can and moved to the far end of the park, lying down in the grass near a jogging trail. My ankle throbbed, but I managed to drift in and out of sleep until the sky began to lighten. I lay as still as I could, hoping maybe I'd doze off again, waiting for what I knew was inevitable. This park was popular with early morning joggers and dog walkers. It wouldn't be long before someone noticed me. I was right. Less than half an hour later, I was in the back of an ambulance headed for Denver General. Of course, I had left my wallet back at the house, on the nightstand in the guest room. When I arrived at the hospital, I exaggerated the whole dazed and confused act. I couldn't recall my name, couldn't remember what had happened. Heck, I could barely keep my eyes open. The truth was, I was fully alert, just biding my time. It wasn't until almost noon that the police showed up. I continued to feign confusion for another hour just to make it believable. Finally, around 1 p.m., I figured it was time to give my statement. I had practiced what I was going to say, sticking as close to the truth as feasible, no reason to give them grounds for suspicion. A weary-looking detective, this man with tired eyes and a receding hairline, approached my bedside. "Mr. Ryan Davis," he asked. "Yeah, that's me," I mumbled, trying to sound groggy. "Look, officer, I don't know how much help I'll be. My memory is quite hazy. Just tell me what you do remember, Mr. Davis," he said patiently. "We found you in the park around 6 this morning," a man walking his dog reported it, named Dan. I took a deep breath and launched into my account. I told him about returning from Vegas a day early, walking in on Ashley and Kyle, and how someone attacked me from behind, and then blank. I think Ashley was yelling at me. I stammered, pretending to struggle to recall, couldn't breathe. They must have drugged me or something, because the next thing I knew, I woke up in our spare bedroom, tied to the bed. I showed him the marks on my wrists and ankles. It was awful, officer, I said, my voice catching in my throat. My hands and feet were growing numb. I tried to free myself. I trailed off, letting the implication linger. Ended up just making things worse. I continued, shaking my head. That's when I noticed the TV was on. It was the bedroom camera. Ashley, I shuddered dramatically, letting the detective piece together the rest. It was Ashley and Kyle, right? And another guy, yeah, big dude, never seen him before. I glanced at the detective, measuring his reaction. I think I heard them talking about what they were going to do to me after. It was kind of hard to focus. My head was messed up, but it sounded like they were going to harm me. I think they were hurting Ashley too, like they were going to harm us both. The detective's eyebrows shot up. Bingo, that's when I finally got free. I went on, called 911. I don't know why I dropped the phone, maybe. Maybe I realized Ashley was in on it. I thought I heard her say something like, "Go take care of that idiot." I got scared, had to get out of there. "You don't remember anything after that?" the detective asked. "No, I mean, obviously I escaped, but I don't know how." Did they hit you, Mr. Davis?" I hesitated. I don't think so, but like I said, it's all a blur. The detective scribbled something on his notepad. "What's Ashley saying about all this?" I asked casually. "Your wife claims she found out about you cheating on her, said she just wanted to teach you a lesson," he continued. "She said I wasn't supposed to get hurt." "Did she say how she found out about this affair?" I pressed. The detective gave me a wry look. She said Mr. Thompson told her. "Called you a stupid pig, actually, so let me get this straight." I said, my voice tinged with hurt. "Her only evidence is the word of the guy she's fooling around with." I thought Ashley was smarter than that. "I've never cheated on my wife," I stated firmly, looking him straight in the eye. If she had just asked me, I could have proven it. The detective questioned me for a little while longer, mostly clarifying details, but he didn't seem to doubt anything I'd said. The following day, I was discharged from the hospital. When I arrived home, there was a message from Ashley on the answering machine. She pleaded for me to come to the station and clarify that it was all a misunderstanding, claiming she needed my help to bail her out. I deleted the message and grabbed a beer. The phone rang again. It was Melissa Carter, Ashley's friend, the one who had been caught cheating on her husband and subsequently kicked out. I never liked her. I never cared for her influence on Ashley, and I suspected she had played a role in this ordeal. Melissa was persistent and wouldn't accept no for an answer, so I figured I might as well hear her out. An hour later, she was at my doorstep telling me she had just spoken to Ashley. "She's at her parents' place," Ryan, Melissa said. "She says you were cheating on her during your business trips." "That's insane," I erupted. "I've never cheated on her in my life." Melissa was vague, merely repeating that it was all a big misunderstanding and that I had called the police on her, resulting in her arrest. I took a deep breath, trying to manage my anger. "Let me tell you what happened, Melissa," I began, recounting the same story I had given the detective. Most of it was true about catching Ashley and Kyle, the assault, waking up tied up, the whole 9 yards. She gasped and clutched her chest, but she didn't seem genuinely surprised. If she was an excellent actress. "I can't believe it," she stammered. "Ashley would never. I mean, she's been acting oddly lately, but this just isn't like her. Maybe she's having some kind of breakdown." "Are you going to talk to her, Ryan?" she asked softly. Maybe, I said non-committally. "But why didn't she afford me the same courtesy? If she thought I was doing something wrong, why didn't she just talk to me about it instead of this? Did she ever mention anything to you about this? About me, I mean." Melissa shook her head, feigning complete innocence. "No, never. If she had, I would have told her to discuss it with you directly, right? as if Melissa had ever been on my side. She had always been nothing but trouble where Ashley was concerned. I suspected she had known about Ashley's scheme from the start. I just don't know what's gotten into her. Ryan Melissa sighed dramatically. Just promise me you won't do anything rash until you have all the facts. Don't worry, Melissa, I won't do anything hasty, I assured her, my tone flat. She leaned in and kissed me on the cheek. Is there anything I can do? You've been a great help, Melissa, really. I need some time to process all this. The second she left, I grabbed my phone and called the first lawyer on my list, a man named Robert Carter. He agreed to see me that afternoon. At 2 sharp, I was sitting in Carter's office, laying out the entire sordid story. I want a divorce, Mr. Carter, and I wanted it yesterday. I want those papers served the second she's out of jail. Ho. Hold on a minute, Ryan Carter said, leaning back in his chair. You sure you want to move this fast? I understand you're angry, but these things take time sometimes. If couples just, I know what you were going to say, Mr. Carter, I interrupted, striving to keep my voice even. After what I just told you, do you really think there's anything left to save? I want that divorce. Carter seemed to sense my determination. All right, I can have the papers drawn up today. We can have them served first thing. Actually, I cut him off again. Make it the day after tomorrow. And I'll need her parents' address and her work too. He looked at me curious. The day after tomorrow? Look, I get it, you're hurting, but are you sure about this? Rushing things, Mr. Carter. If you're not willing to be proactive on my behalf, I'm sure I can find someone who is. He held my gaze for a moment, then nodded curtly. Very well, day after tomorrow it is. Walking out of his office, I felt strangely numb, except for my ankle, which was still throbbing. My next stop was the bank. I cleaned out our joint accounts, cancelled the credit cards, and opened new ones in my name only. Ashley might be entitled to half our money eventually, but I wasn't going to make it easy on her. Over the next few weeks, she attempted to contact me, leaving messages at home and even trying to reach me at work. I ignored all of them. Then Carter called Ashley's lawyer, had reached out to him. He explained that she was prepared to contest the divorce unless I agreed to meet with her and listen to her side of the story. I need some time to think about it, I told him. More than a month passed, and finally I called Carter back. She still wants to meet? That's what her lawyer says. Are you sure you don't want to at least tell Ashley this? I'm not meeting with her, not like this. If she wants to contest the divorce, fine, but we're doing it on my terms. We'll remain legally married, but that's it. No calls, no visits, no contact whatsoever until she signs the papers. Make sure she understands that. Carter, I'll convey the message, he said, sounding slightly bewildered. I thought about letting her ponder that for a while as I hung up the phone. The next day, I found myself at Kyle's doorstep. His wife, Beverly, answered the door. I had always appreciated her quiet and kind, nothing like Ashley or her circle. She invited me in and offered me a drink. We sat on the sofa and she began apologizing for Kyle's involvement in the whole mess. Beverly, it's not your fault, I interrupted her. Kyle made his choices just like Ashley did. They're responsible for their own actions. She nodded, but I could tell she felt terrible about the entire situation. I just feel so terrible for what you're going through, Ryan, she said, then hesitantly added, maybe we could find some comfort in each other. I laughed humorlessly. You know, Bev, if I'd met you when I was single, I didn't even finish the sentence before she leaned in and kissed me. Let's just say one thing led to another, and we found ourselves seeking solace in each other's arms. Afterwards, as she nestled against me, she whispered, I wouldn't mind doing this again sometime, Ryan. She blushed. Well, it was nice. The following week, I received a call from the DA's office. It was Christopher Brown, the assistant DA handling the cases involving Ashley, Kyle, and Darnell. Mr. Davis, we got a statement from your wife's attorney, he said. It seems she's claiming you might not be pressing charges, said you talked it over. That's not true at all. I haven't talked to anyone about dropping charges. The truth was, I wasn't sure what I wanted to do about the charges. Ashley had been involved, but how deeply? Did she know they were going to drug me, tie me up like that? I was pretty sure she did, but could I prove it? And who was the muscle, the guy who jumped me? Look, Mr. Brown, I said finally, you do what you've got to do with those people. I'm not asking for any favors. It turns out they all got what they deserved. Daryl, with his trunk full of guns and drugs, was slapped with assault, kidnapping, and a whole mess of other felonies. Kyle pled guilty to assault and walked away with a slap on the wrist a year in a minimum security prison. And Ashley? They charged her with conspiracy to commit unlawful restraint, which sounded like something they made up just for her. Kyle ended up with a year in a minimum security facility, while Darnell faced serious time in a maximum security prison. Ashley got off the easiest probation, but even a slap on the wrist like that was still a felony. She could no longer contest the divorce. Good riddance. I kept the house, kept what was left of our savings. Ashley was out of my life for good, or so I thought. About a month after the divorce was finalized, Melissa called saying Ashley wanted to see me, to explain herself, to apologize. Part of me didn't want anything to do with her, but I was curious. Melissa, bless her meddling heart, convinced me to hear Ashley out. We met at a downtown bar, a dimly lit place with blue lighting on the wall. Ashley practically slid into the seat across from me, relief and gratitude oozing from her. Ryan, thank you for seeing me. Her voice was shaky, as if she was about to cry. She launched into an apology. The whole, I messed up. I'm so sorry. Routine, claiming she had just found out about my affairs, that she'd been hurt and angry. Ashley, I interrupted, my voice emotionless. I never cheated on you. She looked genuinely shocked. Then she backpedaled, admitting that at the time she had believed Kyle, that she had been so blinded by hurt and anger she wasn't thinking clearly. You were already accusing me of something before I left for Vegas, I reminded her. Remember, you mentioned something was bothering you. I should have said something. Then she conceded. I just needed time to process it. Process it, I scoffed. Ashley, you just took Kyle's word for it and didn't even bother asking me. And then, that stunt you pulled, that was your idea of processing, I continued, incredulous. For God's sake, Ashley, he's a lying, cheating scumbag and his friends are drug dealers. You really thought those were the kind of people you could trust? Ashley's face turned red. She looked away, then mumbled, We slept together, Ryan, the night before you got back. And Darnell, that was just to add insult to injury. Disgusted, I asked, Did you really think I'd just forgive you for all this, Ashley? I asked, unable to keep the incredulity out of my voice. She looked at me, her eyes wide and pleading. Don't you see? It was supposed to even the score so we could move on. I laughed bitterly. Even the score, Ashley? You never even caught me doing anything. You just decided to take revenge, tied me up, drugged me, made me watch you. My voice cracked with anger. That wasn't about evening the score, Ashley. That was about humiliating me. Most people would have just walked away, maybe had an affair of their own. What did you do that went way beyond? She started to cry, big, fat tears rolling down her cheeks. Please, Ryan, just give me another chance. I love you. I've always loved you. You're the only man. What I did with Kyle, with Darnell, it didn't mean anything. It wasn't love. Just tell me what I can do to make you love me again, anything. She pleaded, looking up at me, hope flickering in her tear-filled eyes. It was almost pitiful, almost. Do you really mean that, Ashley? Anything, I asked quietly. She nodded frantically, wiping tears away. Yes, anything. I meant it. I slid out of the booth and leaned down, placing a hand on her shoulder, bringing my mouth close to her ear. Dropped dead, her head slumped onto the table, her sobs echoing in the dimly lit bar as I turned and walked away. 7 months later, Beverly and I were married. And that's how Ryan's life took a dramatic turn from betrayal and heartbreak to finding unexpected love in the most unlikely of places. This gripping tale reminds us that even in the darkest moments, there's always a chance for a new beginning. As Ryan and Beverly start their new chapter together, it's a powerful reminder that sometimes the best revenge is moving on and finding happiness where you least expect it. Thanks for joining us on this journey. Stay tuned for more stories that will keep you captivated until the very end.